reporting in, and there are a few topics I want to discuss today. The first will be um, ancient knowledge of time, and so we're told that these people in the Bible lived thousands of years, and I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention that when they talk about thousands of years, more than likely they're talking about moon cycles, right? Because a moon cycle is 1 month. It's 30 days to go waxing and waning from from new moon to new moon, or from full moon to full moon. So it's 30 days, and it makes a lot more sense that before Galileo could explain that the Earth revolves around the sun, they didn't know that real well. They thought the sun revolved around the Earth because, well, what they could do is they could tell the moon was changing every night, and they were able to measure the time in that way. And so it makes a lot more sense that a year before Galileo was a month, right? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a Copilot. I don't know this for sure. This is just an intuition, my gut instinct. But we're going to do a little live research. I did some, so far when I'm on the internet and I'm seeing like historic accounts of people living thousands of years, I go ahead and do a conversion. You divide by 12, and or like 1,000 years or something. Like about 1,000 years is about 80 years old. And so the people that lived even thousands more years, I don't think that they were anything special. I think they're just human. It's just their measurement of time was different, and for some reason, like, scholars allow this information to like not be corrected, and because no one ever told me this, I had to make it. I mean, they probably tell this information in private schools. I went to public schools. Monty was public educated. So they probably tell this in private schools, and who's in the know, but I didn't know. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Copilot again on Windows, and we're going to ask it a few questions, see if we can find out something new. And later I wanted to go into the 13th Amendment too. That was something I've been putting off, but I was really inspired by this moon time-keeping situation. Alright, yeah, that's good. Alright, so we want to know, what are some of the oldest accounts of humans' ages? I hope I worded that right. So yeah, that's how the internet works. The internet works, the way you ask it questions. You can type in similar things in Google and get way different responses every time. Oh my gosh, I messed that one all up. Let's see if I can read it anyway. No, I messed it up. What are some of the oldest accounts of people? What are some of the oldest accounts of living people? Like, let's see if they get that. How old were they? I hope I'm asking this right. That's the main thing. Okay, we couldn't reach an end. I think we've reached the end of our conversation. Okay, what are some of the oldest people to have lived in history? So it looks like our chat is about something else. Click new topic. Oh my gosh. Alright, so is that what they want? We'll do that. That's the main objective, is trying to ask the right question. Enoch. Methuselah. Yeah, he was the one. Methuselah. That's who I saw. He lived. Oh, they made a big deal about this guy because he was the oldest living person, at the time. So it's simple stuff right here. So he lived to be 969, and then you divide that by 12 months in a year. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. 80 years old for someone that lived that long ago. That makes more sense. Enoch. So apparently Enoch was only 665 years old. Okay, one of Adam's descendants. Alright, let's see how old he was. So he's probably like 40 or something, which is a lot more reasonable. So hopefully... Alright, come on. Come on now. Oh, wow. They did not want me to focus on this pilot thing. So yeah. So that's fascinating. 365, let's just do that one. Divide by 12. Yeah, it's 30 years old. 30 years and a half old. So, there we go. I kind of want to put that mystery to an end. Alright, what we're just saying is, before Galileo, they measured years in moon cycles. So 1 year, instead of being 12 months, 1 year was 1 month. So this guy Methuselah, the oldest one, he was actually 80 years old, if what I'm saying holds. Alright? Well, let's get it read out, so I'll read it to you too. I like doing this.
Certainly. In the Bible, there are several individuals who lived remarkably long lives. Let's explore some of the oldest people mentioned. Enoch. He was one of Adam's descendants and is believed to be the author of the Book of Enoch. Enoch lived for 365 years and was taken by God to heaven without experiencing death. Lamech. Known as Noah's father, Lamech lived to be 777 years old. He is the only patriarch before the flood, besides Adam, who is given a quote in Genesis 5 verse 29. Mahalalel. Mentioned in Adam and Eve's genealogy, Mahalalel lived for 895 years. He was the son of Kenan and the father of Jared. Enosh, Adam's grandson and the first son of Seth, Enos lived for 905 years. Seth was 105 years old when Enos was born. Methuselah. Although Methuselah is the oldest person mentioned in the Bible, living for 969 years, there were others who came close to his incredible age. He is part of the patrilineal lineage connecting Adam to Noah. These ages may seem extraordinary, and interpretations vary. Some view these stories literally, while others see them as symbolic. Regardless, they remain fascinating accounts of longevity in biblical history.
So what we should be really wondering is, why is this not being talked about more? First of all, the Bible's not really talked about in public school. But why aren't our parents really educated on this? Why in society are they pushing this notion that, yeah, there's like superhuman beings out there on Earth? And it's like, yeah, I've heard that people actually said that people actually think there's this guy named Inky from, the Anunnaki. He's like some reptilian overlord that lives inside of a mountain somewhere in California. Maybe. I don't know. But, it's just like, well, you would think these people would want to be known and, worshipped in some way. And if they don't, then maybe they fear in some way. So they're not that tough if they fear. So what we're trying to get at is the truth. So pretty much old moon cycles were originally years. So 1 month was a year. All right. So so now we got that out. Let's ask it a few more questions, see if we can pick up anything new. Let's see. Are old biblical years actually months because they could only observe the moon? Let's see what we get. Lunar months, yeah. Biblical years. Okay, cool. Let's see what this has to say. Read it.
In the Bible, the concept of years is not directly tied to lunar months. Let's explore this further. Lunar months. Lunar months are based on the moon cycles, typically around 29.5 days. Ancient civilizations, including those during biblical times, were aware of lunar phases. However, the Bible does not explicitly define a year as a specific number of lunar months. Biblical years. The Bible describes people's ages in terms of years, but it doesn't provide detailed explanations of how they calculated those years. Genesis 5 records the ages of individuals from Adam to Noah, and these ages are given in years. It's essential to recognize that the Bible was written in a cultural context where people observed seasons, agricultural cycles, and celestial events. Moses and the Pentateuch. According to biblical tradition, Moses wrote the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, including Genesis. Moses was educated in Egypt, which had a sophisticated understanding of astronomy and mathematics. While the Bible doesn't explicitly state how Moses defined a year, it's unlikely that he used lunar months exclusively. Solar and seasonal awareness. Even without formal calendars, ancient people could observe the changing seasons, solstices, and equinoxes. They recognized the regularity of the sun's path and the length of daylight. Seasons, planting, and harvest cycles were crucial for survival, and people adjusted their activities accordingly. Conclusion. While the Bible doesn't provide precise technical details, it reflects an awareness of natural cycles. The concept of a year likely included both solar and lunar aspects, with an emphasis on seasonal changes. So, biblical years were not merely lunar months, but encompassed a broader understanding of time.
Yeah.
In summary,
sure.
biblical years were not directly equivalent to lunar months, but rather a combination of solar and seasonal observations.
Yeah, the moon changes. That's a pretty, it just makes sense to me that you could look up and see the moon in a different phase every night, and it's a lot easier. You look up at the sun, you don't really notice the sun shifting, its arc in the sky as much as you notice the moon. And so that's why, yeah, 30, it's just a natural base number, 30 days. That's how long it takes the moon to rotate. Anyway, so we're not going to beat that with a dead horse. Let's go, instead of the 13th Amendment, well, let's check out the differences between the New and the Old Testament. I think that's a really good way to, let's see what the Copilot AI has to say about, I want to ask it about the Constitution, God's Constitution. So let's see, and, let's see, what is a Constitution? A Constitution. I don't know why this thing's fuzzy. Well, my fisheye lens is all cracked, I think. Alright. Let's just read the first part out loud.
A constitution is the fundamental organizing principle of a political state. It serves as the bedrock for how a government operates, delineates the powers and duties of governing bodies, and guarantees certain rights to the people within that state. Constitutions can take different forms.
Okay, so let's compare New and Old Testament. I already kind of know. I just was inspired by Static in the Attic. He's a great YouTube content creator, and he was just saying that the Rumble isn't as safe as we are led to assume. Instead of giving a strike on Rumble, they'll just go ahead and delete your topic. So yeah, it just shows that we can't get out of line, obviously, because the reason why there's the powers that be are so worried about individuals is because a human mind can be swayed very easily. A human mind can be, I can convince, you can be convinced to see a certain way. Pretty much, you could be a victim of abuse your whole life and not even realize you're being abused, and even, kind of fall in love with your abuser, you know what I mean, or idolize your abuser. That's that's kind of what happens, and so if that's the case, I gotta, where am I going with this? Okay, so if someone comes along to you and tells you, it's like, hey, that guy's been abusing the shit out of you, and it's like, then you start to think about it. It's like, well, it was all just jokes and we were just having fun. And then it's like, no. And then you look at it, and in reality, it's like, oh yeah. And then the person, so you can open someone's eyes. There are people in this world that realize we're being abused and they can articulate it and actually speak out against it, and there are other people that can't understand the abuse that's happening, that pretty much society is inflicting on a human, because in a way it's reality, it's what we're dealing with, but the real thing is it's how much abuse will the human take, how much strife, how much pain and struggling will each individual take to gain, so much money, or to get jobs done, or deal with their boss, and keep paying their taxes, and to follow the rules and not like go reckless on the road and stuff, or not like just, it's like how much stress. And that's what they're pretty much administering out right now in a large scale, macro scale, continental, like the United States. It's how much stress can they put people under, and how much wealth can they extract from the people as they stress them out. And so, yeah, it's a game. And once you realize that we're all being played, and literally the Matrix, we're all like, being juiced, we're given this opportunity. It's like, all right, yeah, go ahead and have at it, kid. And, you know, there's just so much you have to educate yourself on in this environment. And it's literally impossible. And then what else you gotta do is you gotta trust people. All right. And so what's happening is trust is being eroded, trust is being eroded. Like personally, I've gone to business getting oil changes. You get your car broken more than it was than before, and then you call and try to get accountability, and they act like they don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, and doctors will cancel your appointment the day before your appointment, and it's like, hey man, I've had this, like, I need a tooth, my tooth taken care of immediately, and they think it's okay just to abuse people, and so yeah, that's kind of the society we're dealing with and we're operating in right now. And it's just, it's death by a thousand cuts, really, and it's like you go to places, and you go to a place to spend money, and it ends up costing you more money. Like I said, I was getting an oil change and they broke piece on the car, and now to fix that, it's going to cost even more than that oil change did. So that discounted oil change just became, 4 times, 5 times more expensive. So if you think about me and the mechanic having that issue, there's probably plenty of other businesses and other entities that are having the same issues, where they're providing a service and they're actually costing more than they're providing. The net benefit is negative, okay? So that's what we're in right now. We're in a situation where the net benefit seems like it's getting real friggin' negative for everyone. And how much abuse are we going to take to get, or are we going to stick around and take? And that's what ideology and me talking and maybe opening some synapse in your brain, connecting some stuff. It's like, hey, there is a better world out there and we deserve better, and we're being screwed over. So if I can inspire you like that, it's a hell of a lot better than the infrastructure and the roads and all the businesses and the Walmarts and the Myers and stuff. Those things are hard assets, and they're all powered by ideas. The idea that we need that stuff. Okay, that's what it's powered by. And if you disrupt the idea that we need Walmart, that we need Meyer, that's a threat. the people who own those products, who own those companies. Those people are the ones that we are fighting. We're fighting. The government is run by these people who own these assets. Everything's intertwined in it, which is disgusting. It really is disgusting. Monty wants you to know that it's disgusting that you have everyone's finances intertwined and pretty much in a big orgy. So everyone's retirements are all dependent on the state. Everything's dependent on each one another, and it's pretty sad. So that's what I'm saying, and there's a better way of life, and we could go for it. And if we're going to keep on, if we want to have it, we're going to have to give up some things, I think. It'd be a lot easier, I think, if we all kind of mixed in a little simpler life in with nature and technology, so that we can have the technology that we have is liberating, but it's just like living in cities that are pretty much just projects. Like everywhere, it's either you have a house or you live in an apartment, which is pretty much like a project. It's like a little shoebox. And I'm just saying, there's a better way, but there's not an incentive to teach you that from any other source. The other sources want to keep you in the city. They want to keep you in the neighborhoods. They want you to keep patronizing Walmart. They want you to keep going to the shops. They want you to keep on ordering from Amazon. And when, you're just ingesting, it's just plastic, we end up ingesting ourselves anyway. So I'm kind of on a rant right now. And that's kind of a big thing I just bit off right there. And there's an incentive for people's minds to be swayed in certain directions, okay? And the reason that is because the whole infrastructure that is around you is pretty much provided by those people, the people that get benefited, all right? And so this kind of goes back into, what are your politics, what are your religion? What's your religion, So a good way to do that is to figure out, the religion. If you can understand the religion, then you can understand the people. And this goes back into Static, what he was saying. Static in the Attic, he's a YouTube content creator. Shout out to him. But he was talking about the New Testament versus the Old Testament. And the constitution of God in each one is completely different. The Old Testament is talking about pretty much, it's a lot of usury and a lot of suffering and a lot of murder and a lot of advantage taking. And then the New Testament is the New Testament is actually a forgiving, loving God where we have grace. So in the Old Testament, the idea was that you had to make sacrifices. God would give you permission to reign on a kingdom, and if you succeeded, then things were like you had to burn every single thing in the kingdom down. You had to kill all the humans, all the animals. You had to kill all the destroy all the produce and stuff, and start over. And I think there's a story in the Old Testament where the king didn't want to. He was told by God to destroy everything, but he chose to keep the cattle or something, and then he ended up getting cursed. So in a nutshell, a lot of the Old Testament is King Saul. Starts off with King Saul, and then he's a ruler. I'm pretty sure he's an okay guy. And then there's a guy, David. He comes in. He's a young and up-and-comer, and Saul knows that David's going to take his place, so he does what he can to destroy him. David finally takes Saul's place, and does a good job, and then eventually David's corrupted as well in the future. So that's kind of a loose idea. Also, in the Old Testament, there's multiple stories. If you read the Bible, there's actually two different Genesis stories, and they're right next to each other. And so that's kind of a common theme in the Bible. There's two stories right next to each other. I know with Genesis that was one, and there's a few other aspects too that talk about they have pretty much two scenarios. The same thing is happening. There's two sets of commandments in the Bible. If you the King James Bible, if you read it, there's two sets of commandments, and you can compare and contrast them. They're all right there. Let's see if we can find anything on the AI about it. Um, let's see, what was the difference in God of the Old Testament, I hope I spelled that right, and New Testament. So yeah, let's see what that one says. And this will, it's a pretty easy one. I just explained it, but let's see what Copilot, how they explain it. Yeah, I'll play it so we don't have to read it.
In the Bible, the portrayal of God in the Old Testament OT and the New Testament NT may initially appear distinct, but a closer examination reveals continuity and consistency. Let's explore the differences and similarities. God's wrath and love. Old Testament. In the OT, God is depicted as powerful, holy, and sometimes wrathful. He punishes disobedience and displays righteous anger. New Testament. In the NT, God's love is prominently emphasized through Jesus Christ. God's mercy, grace, and forgiveness are central themes. Unity of God. Jesus Christ. The NT authors consistently affirm that the God revealed in the OT is the same God now revealing himself through Jesus Christ. John's Gospel. John describes Jesus as the Word who was with God and was God. Jesus, the incarnate Word, reveals the Father to humanity. John 1 verses 1 to 3, 18. Fulfillment of promises. Jesus as fulfillment. Early NT preachers emphasized that God fulfilled his promises through Jesus. Peter, for instance, declared that Jesus' death and resurrection were part of God's definite plan, Acts 2 verse 23. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The God of the OT, known to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, glorified Jesus, Acts 3 verse 13. Immutability of God. Consistency, God's nature remains unchanging. While different aspects of his character are highlighted in various passages, God himself does not change, Malachi 3 verse 6. Wrath and love. The same God who poured out wrath in the OT also sent his Son for salvation. 2 Thessalonians.
Wow. All right, so there's obviously biasness on this because the God in the Old Testament was nothing like the God in the New Testament. God in the Old Testament was very vicious and vile and mean. Actually, the God in the Old Testament did approve of rape of women, and also it did approve of all kinds of crazy other shit. So, I think the idea, Static was hitting on was that if Jewish people, they worship the Old Testament, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of usury and a lot of screwing people over in that. And then you got the Christians that are following the New Testament, which is all about getting screwed over and forgiving the people that screw you over. You kind of create two different classes. And so it seems like maybe there's a class of people that just prey on and live on the work of another class, so that's kind of what Kanye was getting back into. And it's kind of it's more present in the entertainment industry because they actually have handlers and stuff, and the celebrities of one person, it's kind of, you can lock your eyes on that one target and kind of see who's interacting with them and how their interactions are changing too. All right, so Pilot was, I obviously there's some biasness in that because the God in the Old Testament and the New Testament is very different, and if you don't actually critically analyze the Bible and its teachings, you'd fall victim for what these AI systems are. So unfortunately with the AI systems we have like a complete biasness now too. So people can be or the technology can tell you what it wants and people will pretty much believe it. So, and yeah, they'll be able to pretty much in more detail be able to manipulate people individually, like kind of like how we went from customization. Originally, if you wanted a belt, you'd go to a leather maker and get a leather belt produced, or he'd make one belt for you, and then we got the Industrial Revolution, so they'd make millions of belts and sell them across the world. So it's just another step in the industrial revolution, but it's an industrial revolution of the mind, AI technology. Now AI, you can ask it a question and it will feed you a very precise idea, but politically biased, so that it will be sound and yeah, it but I was also watching Reggie Middleton. He's a cryptocurrency developer. He developed Veritasium. It's a cryptocurrency. He was the only guy that was like he was selling his tokens back in 2017, maybe 15 to 16, and he was the only guy that the SEC really laid the hammer on, and the SEC forbid him from selling any more tokens. And so he's pretty much he has just a handful, a packet full of all of his tokens. I purchased the token. You can still purchase the tokens; they're out there to be purchased, but he's not allowed to really sell them to investors and stuff like that, and he has to like hold on to this. I don't know exactly what's going on with it, but he can't produce anymore. There's a lot of Veritasium out there in the cryptocurrency economy. I have very little, but he was on one of the AIs. I think it was Google's AI service, and he was actually educating the AI service on financial transactions. And the AI service was ingesting the information and actually thanking him. So he would actually correct the AI. And so that's kind of fascinating. So Reggie, he's just on another level. His brain is, yeah, really interesting guy. Highly recommend checking him out. Reggie Middleton. So the point is that these AI systems are not perfect, right? They're missing a lot of information. They have fixed databases that they can pull from, and they're years old. And so yeah, they can be corrected, and they're constantly learning. This is the infancy age of AI. Apparently, on a side note, the AI is at a stage where it's operating like at a Nokia phone, apparently, like the old, brick Nokia phones. Apparently, that's where the stage of AI is right now. And it's just developing so quick. So yeah, maybe it will help us free ourselves and obtain a life that's more nature oriented, more balanced, and a life where we don't have to sacrifice our loved ones or sacrifice our friends, sacrifice our own dignity. You know what I mean? Because yeah, there's been a lot of very unhappy people. There's still a lot of very unhappy people in the world. Think about it. It's like, really, life should be fairly pleasurable, right? Life should be fairly pleasurable. That's a logical assumption. We got the sunshine. It can be tough, I guess. It can be tough, but it's so just surviving's tough, I guess. And it's just, yeah, just you can tell there's just so many miserable people on the, and they're pretty, you can tell by their, aggressive driving and stuff, you know what I mean? Just recklessness and no consideration for others and stuff. So yeah, that's just an easy way to view people. It's like, if they can't follow the rules of the road, it's like, what else? What other rules do they break into that you can't see? So you got to think about it like that. It really is. It's like so it all kinds of mixes into itself, and so yeah, but we'll go on to the missing 13th Amendment in another episode. But I wanted to bring. Well, let's see if we can find something that gives a legitimate comparison of God's wrath. Or let's see if we can ask, what are some of the savage things God did in the Old Testament? Because there's some really sick shit going on back then. Certainly. Alright, yeah, let's see what the hell this old God's up to. Bam. Well, yeah, let's get into it.
Certainly. In the Old Testament OT, there are accounts of God's actions that can be perceived as severe or even harsh. Here are a few notable examples. Sending bears to murder children. In 4 Kings 2:23-24, a man named Eliseus was mocked by a group of children for being bald. Eliseus cursed them, and God sent 2 bears to maul 42 of these children to death.
42.
It's a disturbing incident where divine punishment seems disproportionate to the offense. Turning Lot's wife into salt. In Genesis 19 verse 26, during the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's wife looked back at the city despite being warned not to. As a consequence, God turned her into a pillar of salt. The exact reason for her action remains unclear, but the severity of her punishment is striking. Exclusion of certain people from worship. In the OT, God expressed specific preferences regarding who could enter his presence. Leviticus 21 verses 17 to 23 lists various physical conditions, blemishes, blindness, lameness, etc., that disqualified people from serving as priests or approaching the altar. While this may not be savage in the same sense, it reflects a strict standard of physical perfection. The Great Flood. In Genesis 6:1-822, God decided to destroy all land-dwelling life on earth except for a remnant. The flood wiped out humanity due to widespread wickedness. While it serves as a warning against evil, the scale of destruction is immense. Drowning of the Egyptian army. In Exodus 14 verses 26 to 31, God parted the Red Sea for the Israelites to escape from Egypt. When Pharaoh's pursuing army followed, God caused the sea to close, drowning them. Again, this event highlights God's power, but also the severity of his judgment. Remember that these accounts are part of a complex narrative, and interpretations vary. Some see them as historical events, while others view them symbolically or allegorically. Regardless, they provoke thought about divine justice and mercy.
Uh-huh. Give me more savage stories of God. I demand more! It feels so good listening to. Damn! God damn, boy! It just keeps on coming. No, you already did the Great Flood. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, they already did a few of these. But I want to hear.
Certainly. The Old Testament contains several stories that depict God's actions in ways that some might consider severe or harsh. Here are some notable examples. The rape of Dinah, Genesis 34. Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, was violated by the prince Shechem. In a patriarchal society, a marriage was arranged between Shechem and Dinah to undo the shame resulting from the incident. However, Dinah's brothers were not satisfied. On the 3rd day after Shechem's circumcision, they attacked and killed all the males in Shechem city, taking their children, wives, and possessions. Genocide in Joshua, Joshua 1-12. The Israelites believed that the land of Canaan was promised to them. The book of Joshua recounts the systematic slaughter of the people already living in the promised land. While ancient people might have seen this as defending their kin and gods, the idealized account in Joshua describes the Israelites exterminating the native inhabitants. The Great Flood, Genesis 6:1-822. God decided to destroy all land-dwelling life on earth except for a remnant. Noah and his family were spared, along with pairs of animals. The scale of destruction is immense, emphasizing God's judgment against wickedness. Destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Genesis 19 verses 1-29. These cities were known for their wickedness. God rained down fire and sulfur, destroying them completely. Lot's wife, who looked back, was turned into a pillar of salt. Drowning of the Egyptian army, Exodus 14 verses 26-31. God parted the Red Sea for the Israelites to escape from Egypt. When Pharaoh's army pursued them, God caused the sea to close, drowning the Egyptians. This event highlights God's power, but also the severity of his judgment. These stories provoke reflection on divine justice, mercy, and the complexities of interpreting ancient texts.
I can't recall, but are there any savage stories of God and the New. Any savage stories in the New Testament? I'm not sure. Revelations. Okay, yeah, so yeah, let's just look over, how severe God's will was in the New Testament.
Certainly. While the New Testament NT primarily emphasizes God's love, grace, and redemption through Jesus Christ, there are still some intense or challenging passages. Here are a few. The Book of Revelation. The final judgment is depicted in particularly violent terms in the NT, especially in the Book of Revelation. Revelation contains gruesome scenes of cosmic battles, plagues, and bloodshed. For instance, it describes birds feasting on human flesh at God's banquet, Revelation 19 verses 17 to 21. Jesus' cleansing of the temple. In John 2 verses 13 to 17, Jesus enters the temple in Jerusalem and drives out the merchants
All right,
and money
yeah, that's
changers.
nothing.
He overturns tables and uses a whip to expel
Nothing
them.
compared to,
This act of righteous anger challenges the notion of a meek and mild Jesus. Ananias and Sapphira. In Acts 5 verses 1 to 11, Ananias and Sapphira lie about their financial contribution to the early Christian community. As a result, they drop dead after being confronted by Peter. This incident underscores the seriousness of honesty and integrity. The parable of the unforgiving servant. In Matthew 18 verses 21 to 35, Jesus tells a story about forgiveness. A servant owes a massive debt to his master, who forgives him. However, the same servant refuses to forgive a fellow servant's smaller debt. The master becomes furious and punishes the unforgiving servant. The parable highlights the severity of withholding forgiveness. The rich man and Lazarus. In Luke 16 verses 19 to 31, Jesus tells a parable about a rich man who ignores the suffering beggar Lazarus at his gate. Both die, and Lazarus is comforted in Abraham's bosom, while the rich man suffers torment in Hades. The stark contrast between their fates serves as a warning about compassion and priorities. Remember that these stories are meant to provoke thought, challenge assumptions, and convey deeper spiritual truths. They reveal aspects of God's character beyond mere sentimentality.
So as you see, that the God of the Old Testament, much different than the New Testament. So in the Old Testament, you have stories of a lot of murder and a lot of destruction, and then in the New Testament, the Old Testament, you have the murder and destruction, and then in the New Testament, he's like getting upset at people for not, forgiving debts and stuff. That's it. Jesus kicking over the temple, or kicking over the, money changers. That's supposed to be violent. So obviously, there's a bias within the AI system, and you could tell just by what you've seen so far. Originally, it said there is no difference and that they are the same, but then again, the examples I asked for, the savagery, and it shows it leads a logical person to believe that the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament are not the same. And if that's the case, maybe we have a society or a class of human that worships the Old Testament and, are a little more empathetic towards destruction and usury, And then we have the New Testament followers that are more like just told to be nice to the money changers and also forgive people their debts and be happy about it. So you see, there's two different things coming here. So if you have a group of people that worship the Old Testament, and you put people that worship the New Testament into one society, the one that will use force and what Christians New Testament subscribers would say would be dirty tactics, So that's what we're in right now. And so it seems like pretty much Christianity is pretty much just a farming, pretty much just Christians are getting farmed in order to satisfy the Jewish class. And that sounds kind of tough, but I don't know. That's kind of just my general opinion. And what happened? The reason I would say this is most attorneys, doctors, a lot of these higher end, the jobs were, there's no hands-on work, or the doctors and stuff, yeah, hands-on, but it's highly skilled work. It's all filled by certain groups. And so, I mean, are they good? Are they just better at it than other humans? No, probably not. But do they know the right people, and do they know how to do, navigate? Really, that's the real issue, is how to navigate in this system. And so what we're seeing is by 2050, Muslims will be the most popular religion, the most populated religion. And what's going to happen is these people are going to eventually fill in positions of power, because just by the pure numbers, they're going to be, with the smart ones, because they're the they're the flourishing garden right now, and in that garden there's going to be beautiful flowers. Other gardens, Christianity and Jewish people, their gardens will be beautiful as well, but their gardens will not be as big as Muslim gardens. Well, and that's all depending on if the United States doesn't go ahead and nuke Iran and start going after just trying to exterminate Muslims. China's already exterminating Muslims. Look into the Uyghur people. They are Muslims from Western China. They're kind of just in the way. They don't assimilate into the culture. So that's another thing too that's very interesting. When a new culture comes in, so back in the old days, Rome was sacked by Germans, or Rome, before it was sacked, Rome in its older days would work with the Germans in German tribes around the land. They would work with them and allow the German tribes to inhabit near the Roman inhabitants. But the Germans would not. They would accept the living quarters and all the other benefits, but they would not assimilate into the Roman culture. They kept all their deities. They kept their religions and stuff. And so that's kind of fascinating. But people say the United States is a Christian nation. Maybe at one point the people that founded it were Christian. But the way it's set up is that the biggest gang in town runs the federal government, and the smaller gangs have the remedy of the judicial system to regulate the federal government. So naturally, this is Monty's opinion, humans naturally, for power and control and safety, form gangs. These gangs are just normal. They're kind of like biological systems that get created in nature and chemistry and biology. They form, and these people will go to work and have jobs as engineers and whatever and stuff, but they'll be a part of a secret society in a way, and that secret society is formed to protect their livelihoods and whatever. Or yeah. So it's kind of like a plague on a society, and you can go back into JFK's speech on that. He talks about secret societies and why they're a detriment to society. It's because people they obligate them. When you run for, when you're in the position of power in the United States, your oath of office is to the U.S. and the Constitution, to the people of the United States. But if you are a part of a secret society, you already have an oath to that secret society to always be true to your brothers in that realm. So there's a conflict of interest, and then you get someone in a high position, and they can pretty much sell that information to their brotherhood in order for their brotherhood to reign supreme, you know. So that's kind of what we're working with. And so Muslims are going to be the if we're on track by 2050, Muslims should be the most populated religion in the world, all right? I honestly think Muslims are probably already the most populated religion in the world. It's just no one wants to digest that information right now. Just like how Monty also believes that the federal government isn't where it stops, but there's already a global governance that sets policy for the United States federal government, and that federal government sets policy for the state government. It's a trickle down system that's already been created, and through the media. Here's another good point. Well, I'll get to that, but they're trying to make it so that in a few generations, the kids will be like, "Yeah, it's always been a global government. You know, we've always had the global government, and then the federal government." And guys like people like us will be gone, and it's like, no, it's supposed to be the federal government isolating from all that, so it can be independent and make choices like that. So right now, I believe that the state of affairs is that, yeah, there's already a global governance that's running our federal government, but there's not the political climate to come out and actually tell the people that that is the case. Which is, that's why engineering is important. That public has to be engineered to a certain point and led to a certain place before they, are able to accept information in a certain way. Right? That makes sense to me. So, with the Muslims coming, on coming to well, I wanted to bring up that in UCLR, Southern California University, Southern LA, they had a Muslim, um, what is it, a Victorian, or, the top of the class, the highest GPA student, and that was a Muslim for the college, and she was going to give a graduation speech. Anyways, the university, because she's Muslim and pro-Palestine, they went ahead and cut off her graduation speech and said she was not allowed to, give it, which is completely ridiculous. But one of the speakers for the graduation was the guy that directed Crazy Rich Asian People or Chinese People, and so that's kind of weird. So obviously, discrimination towards Muslim is already the case, and it's blatant, and they're allowed to get away with it. I hope they sue, and for discrimination. I hope that Muslim lady sues for discrimination, because that's what it was, based on her religion and political ideology. So, and then they have a speaker that's did the Crazy Rich Asian People movie, which, Asian people are just like us, they're kind of in the same, and the Jewish people are like us too, it's like, there's definitely higher classes of these cultures, that are making the higher level function, the higher level thoughts and processes that are in charge of that. So, like, yeah, I'm a Christian American, but, there's, guys above, that are, maybe one day we can break into that, but there are guys up above that are, at a higher status, and, whose actions make a lot more waves in our culture, or in our systems that we have in place. And so, the thing is, a guy like me can get on YouTube and pretty much have influence over people's opinions. Obviously, YouTube does, they try to throttle, because it's just like they only give you so many hits, it's like, it makes sense. If it's technology, they're going to have ultimate exposure, they're going to have the ultimate say on what kind of exposure you have, so they're like, yeah, this guy will get about 400 views, we'll keep him at that. And so that's the case. So that's the fear, though, um, that one person can sway opinions. That's so like kind of goes back into these corporate guys that are invested heavily in our physical realm. They own the stores and all the stuff on the side of the road, and we're very dependent on it. Those majority shareholders of those companies, they kind of forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, those are the guys that they have the sway in society, politics and commerce as well, and business. The guys that are invested in it and actually shareholders. So yeah, so if you're U.S. military, so the way it is, if you're a commissioned officer or a non-commissioned officer, a commissioned non-commissioned officer works on a contract. So if your contract says you're going to get paid this amount of money every month or every year, paid out weekly or bi-weekly, and in exchange you perform the X, Y, and Z functions for the military. All right, and and I learned this from Douglas Dietrich on YouTube. Douglas Diet Rich. He's a great conspiracy lecturer and theorist, and just overall a good entertainer. So, a non-commissioned officer has a contract, and if that contract is not fulfilled, he doesn't have to fight. But there's also commissioned officers. Commissioned officers are like stakeholders. They don't work on contract. They actually have vested interest in the state. So there are guys in our governments there are the non-commissioned officers, even if they don't get paid. I mean, the commissioned officers, even if they don't get paid, they still have to fight. Because they're going down with the ship, and they know that pretty much the commissioned officers are the guys that get executed immediately. They get hung, and all that stuff, and they get made public displays of, because during the spoils of war, that's just what you do, is you just appease and take the guy. Those are the guys that are pretty much running this thing anyway, by hook or by crook. They're running their program by hook or by crook. Doesn't matter ethical what they're doing. They just need to run it. They need to hit their marks, and so they're doing this thing where they're all kinds of shadow ops and stuff, and things aren't like, so yeah, government and politics don't really work the way you think it does, or the thing. And that's another thing too, it's assumptions. The dangerous thing about entertainment is that it gives us assumptions to work off of. And I'm not just talking about YouTube and like guys like me. A guy like me can be dangerous because I can give you assumptions to work off of, and then you might actually go out and affect society, taking those assumptions. And that's exactly how I think entertainment is a tool, a weapon. Entertainment is called a program, like a TV show is called a program, and you use a program on a computer, like when so a program is pretty much, it churns up energy, information into something you can use, right? So if you get all this data and you have to run it through a program, it will churn out information you can process pretty much. So that's kind of like an idea of a program. And so what these TV shows is I know I'm watching a TV show, we're watching a TV show, and that we have a willing suspension of disbelief, and that we can't believe everything that we watch because, it's just entertainment. Well, I think there's a certain way that they've constructed entertainment that's maniacal in a way, but it's a psychological tactic, I would think. I can't really articulate it and point it out, but what I think is going on is, I can't give you a specific situation. Well, maybe I could, but the idea is that in these TV shows that we know are fake, the little things that we don't pay attention to, but subconsciously intake, that's where they really make their move. That's where the real manipulation lies. And for don't be don't be so naive when it comes to business and retrieval of information. And there's so much research done into the smallest aspects of business. The psychological things, like what rooms are painted what color, like what trim. Like in Disney, they use a certain color and it invokes feelings and thoughts. It's like that for every little thing that goes onto the TV and that's produced on, by the mainstream media. There are every little aspect of that TV show. They include little things that shape the opinion and make assumptions in our own brain that we go out and we affect society with. So that's the danger of entertainment. So, and like back in the 90s, the homosexuality was like hardly, it was everyone, no one talked about it. It's like you talked about it and people were like, they had gay clubs and stuff like that. And then I noticed in like 2000s, mid 2000s, my friend's dad was saying every main TV show there's a gay character in it. And that wasn't the main topic. The homosexual character wasn't the main topic, but he was there. And so that kind of gave people, they didn't pay attention to him, but what it did was it created a assumption in the brain that, it's like, okay, yeah, they're, that it would lead more people to more people were led on to believe that they're probably homosexual than they really are. And then God knows what happened from there. People can be manipulated easily. I'm not saying homosexuality is wrong. It's been around since the beginning of time. Like all politicians have always been homosexual, I guess, because I remember hearing about like kings and stuff making like the aristocrats and stuff back in the old days would sleep with like the diplomats and stuff. It was just one big weird breed. And so now you hear things like Will Smith, and he's apparently sleeping with his son Jaden. There's a new interview with Jaguar that's come out, and she's accused Will Smith of having raped his own son, and Jada knew about it. And I think that's kind of more common than we think in our society. It's just families don't talk about it, and the fathers are the main providers, and so they don't really get to deal with the consequences because they're head of household. The wife is usually a stay-at-home mother and will not be able to, has no other life. What's the wife's position? The wife can come clean, lose out on her money-making husband, and she's going to lose out on, and she's going to be known as a criminal as well. So that's why these conspiracies start in families and they don't stop, and it's a continual cycle of generation because people want to keep these secrets within their family. So if you think that it's not, or if you think it's uncommon for, every household's dealing with these demons, okay, especially in the suburbs. Especially if you're hooked into the mainstream, I think these demons are even stronger in those households. All right, so we were just talking about, Jaguar talking about Will Smith having raped his own son, and I feel like, that's probably a more common thing, than people are willing to admit. And why is that the case? I don't know. It's destructive. It seems like a very destructive thing, though. It seems like a very destructive thing that was put in our culture to pretty much corrupt a culture, you know? the stories coming out about Will Smith and P. Diddy, these high level elite entertainers, and the depravity that they would engage in. It reminds me of the Aristocrats joke. Apparently, let's see if the co pilot knows about it. The Aristocrats joke, comma, what is it? See if it will tell. So yeah, there's a joke back in the day, and it's like apparently the comedian's famous joke, and comedy's always been used as a way to pretty much David versus Goliath. We know the story. Everyone was afraid to take on Goliath because he was so big and strong, and David had faith, and he was a young man, armed with only a slingshot. And so David went on in faith, and he was able to take out he's able to take out Goliath. I kind of forgot where I was going with that, but let's see what the Aristocrats joke. It's been around for a long time, and it's pretty much just like saying that these aristocrats are just the most deprived thing, and they're all inbred, incestual, and this is like, so that's what comedy has become. David versus Goliath is a good way to conceptualize comedy, because usually comedy people are just regular everyday guys that are out in society, and they're able to make a pretty much like the prince has no, or the king has no clothes on. Like they're able to articulate that which our society deems no one's brave enough to say it, or no one's able to articulate it in a way that comedians are able to say it, and they're able to invoke. Humility is a great way to bring ego down. Humility, if you humiliate someone, it's a good way to bring on humbleness. And you got guys like Diddy and Will Smith that have been going on, they've been living extraordinary lives for decades. And, so while they're chasing that high, living that elitist lifestyle, they get to engage in these deprived acts. So there's a joke about the aristocrats. Well, I'll show you what it is on AI. It looks like we did get a hit back. So I'll read you, this will show you what the aristocrats joke's about.
Certainly. The Aristocrats is a legendary and taboo-defying joke that has been told by numerous stand-up comedians. It dates back to the vaudeville era and has become infamous for its outrageous and offensive content. Here's how it goes. Setup. A family or a representative, usually the head of the household, visits a talent agent to pitch their stage act. The agent asks what their act consists of. Act. If the whole family is present, they perform the act for the agent. Otherwise, they describe it in as much detail as they prefer. Traditionally, the description is tasteless, ribald, and designed to significantly transgress social norms. Taboo elements such as racism, animal cruelty, incest, rape, child sexual abuse, coprophilia, coprophagia, bestiality, necrophilia, cannibalism, and murder are common themes. Punchline. The shocked or intrigued agent asks what the act is called. The proud answer, sometimes delivered with a flourish, is the Aristocrats. The humor of the joke lies in the extreme and absurd nature of the family act, juxtaposed with the highfalutin name they give themselves. Because the objective is its transgressive content, it is most often told privately, such as by comedians to other comedians. The joke gained wider public attention when Gilbert Gottfried told it during the Friars Club roast of Hugh Hefner, following a controversial 9/11 joke he had made just 18 days after the terrorist attacks. Remember that this joke is intentionally offensive and meant for shock value. It's not suitable for all audiences, and discretion is advised.
Okay, so the point of the joke, the aristocrats, is since the beginning of time, aristocratic people have always been of a deprived nature. They've always been doing the stuff that's completely taboo. Sleeping with, incest is one of them. And I've heard of Instagram models that have been flown out to Dubai and had to sleep with animals, bestiality. and it was performed by princes. Royal princes of Saudi Arabia would fly these women out. That's what I've heard, and so all that stuff exists, and this just regular white, or I mean just regular normal people, and they don't realize it's just like white, black, Mexican, Asian, middle class, normal folks. They're just kind of like in shock and awe because it's just not the nature we were raised in. It's just you know it when you do that kind of stuff, it breeds very odd feelings. So one example is Jaden Smith. I watch Peterson, Mr. I Am Comedy. He's really cool. I watch him. He's funny as shit, and he talks about all the P Diddy stuff going on right now. And he was talking about Jaden Smith and Justin Bieber, and Jaden Smith. They're pretty much having sex together. Those two celebrity kids, and well, they're adults now, but who knows when they're hooking up with each other. And anyway, so there's some footage where Justin Bieber's standing talking to some other guys on like in a group outside. And Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son, comes up and like pretty much rams his dick in Jaden's butt, kind of grinds his crotch into his butt, and Bieber wasn't expecting it, and then he turns around and he sees it, and you could tell his stomach just dropped because it was like Bieber, like Jaden was doing was exposing Bieber, because they knew Jaden knew paparazzi was watching, and so he went up and he was like, well, I'm gonna sexually assault this other guy in front of the camera, and that's going to show ownership, that's going to show dominance, and that's also going to show that humiliation as well. And what can we say about Jaden? Jaden was humiliated by his father by being kissed on the lips on TV, and God knows he probably was, ashamed of that. Probably people are still ridiculing him about that to this day, just because it's so tasteless and just deprived. And so Jaden's probably had that on, and so when Jaden probably got his chance to assault Justin Bieber like he did, he took it, and Justin Bieber, being the cool guy, trying to be the cool guy he is, kind of just took it and rolled with it and like kissed Jaden's neck. So that pretty much said, yeah, they're like they're an item, and Jaden was probably upset that Bieber wouldn't admit in public that, yeah, those two were screwing around. And so Jaden pretty much called his bluff on it. And then also Tyler, the creator, Jamil, Mr. I Am Comedy, was saying Jaden called out, what's his name, Tyler, the creator, about them hooking up together. And Tyler, the creator, was like all embarrassed, didn't want to be known for hooking up with Jaden. Anyways, and so that's just the Will Smith family. And you know why they're doing it? It's probably the society, because they're black, and they want to, the guys running Hollywood and shit want to just, the black culture, once it has some solid foundation and people that it can look up to, and a culture that's bred. You see the culture that bad boy hip hop and all that shit has bred. It's bred a whole culture. These black guys think their whole identity is hip hop and rap. And what are they being told now? Yeah, your whole identity is that, but these guys are all gay too. It's pretty frustrating. And, it's just, I obviously see it. It's the black culture being used by obviously another higher culture that wants to fuck up their mindset, you know what I mean, even more than what it is. Kanye West was saying that Planned Parenthoods, yeah, they're abortion clinics for black people. That's a black genocide happening right under our nose. And now they're forcing these people like P. Diddy and stuff, and Will Smith, iconic actors for the black community. Now Will Smith is assaulting people on stage, and then they're all having deprived sexual acts. The white people are doing it too up on Why are the white folks not being ousted? That's what I want. And the black community should be outraged, really pissed off that these people are feeding us this shit, you know? And I don't know why anyone else is taking it. Like, am I the only one seeing that? Am I the only one able to articulate it? What do you guys think? I mean, I swear, it's easy to see. It's just like, and it's really surprising how many people fall for that shit too. And it's really smart people that fall for it. I could see it from the beginning, you know. I like DMX, I like Kid Rock. Big Timers, they had that one song, but apparently Birdman and Lil Wayne were homosexual, and there was coming out back in the day too, but it was all being covered up. So, yeah, you know, it's just like, who's corrupting? It's like maybe the black culture does, like, you know, it's more apt to homosexualness, you know. Maybe they're just more liberal. I don't know. Like, maybe a black guy could let me know. Like, I don't want to be out of line, but the way I was raised was, you know, if you're gay, you know, respect it. You know, you got to own it. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't have to fucking shove it in my face, but it's just like, yeah, you know, it's like, yeah, you know, and don't be fucking flirting with me every time I talk to you. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. You know, I don't mind gay guys, but it's like it's hard to have a friendship with them if they're always trying to have sex with you. You know what I mean? I guess that's not a real friendship then. It's more of just someone wanting to fuck someone else. Monty's on a Monty's on one right now, obviously. So yeah, the black community should be pissed off. The white community should be pissed off too, because people like P. Diddy were placed in those positions. It's like they were allowed, they were taught all the information on how to run corporations and all that shit, you know? And it's like, who's feeding them that stuff? So that's what I'm upset about. And why is the black culture the only one being ousted as deprived people like Will Smith and P. Diddy and stuff? It's like it's happening more often, and it's like white people need to be called out for it more too, you know. And it's happening in suburbs. It doesn't even have to be aristocratic people. There is deprived shit going on in suburb families right now. People you think are living the top end life, their dads are raping them and stuff, you know, and people don't even realize it, and they grow up and they don't tell anyone, and then they become abusers too. It's like a circle. And yeah, children are sexually exploited every day by their own parents, you know, maybe even step parents. And this kind of goes back into, you know, the mom. The mom won't do anything because what are they going to do? Now they're ousted as like a sexual predator too. There's someone that, you know, condoned it. So yeah, there's a lot of incentive for the truth not to come out. And so I think, you know, if we do talk about this stuff, there is like a lot of healing and a lot of potential victims that won't have to deal with, you know, the trauma of, you know, being attacked by a family member, you know. Um, and then after getting attacked, they get ousted and, you know, abandoned as well, you know. So after being sexually exploited, they get then the people that are, you know, they're done using them. So it's just like, all right, you're off, you're out of sight and out of mind. And that's a common thing that's going on every day, that's happening. And so I think, you know, we should probably, you know, make sure, you know, figure that thing out, you know, because as time goes on, people start to realize and wake up what they've lived through, you know. So yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow, but I think there's a lot more people being affected by this. So yeah, that's what we need to think about, guys. All right, well, that's it for today. And yeah, it just goes back and to show you the idea of the today was we're talking about the Bible. We're talking about the Old Testament and the New Testament, and we decided how God changed from the Old Testament to the New Testament. The Old Testament was a very brutal, angry God, and the God in the New Testament was pretty chilled and all about grace. Something happened. They're not the same gods, and then you have a society where one portion that is, you know, into the Old Testament is running a lot of the business aspects of life and the higher level conceptualization of business and society functions. They worship the Old Testament, and you got the other working class Christians worshiping the New Testament that says If someone comes by and beats you up, steals your money, steals your woman, you gotta apologize. You gotta forgive them and give them peace. You know what I mean? It's like, there might need to be a new edition of the Bible, and unfortunately, there might need to be some retribution. Unfortunately, in this world, there probably should be. Why aren't we talking about more retribution? You know what I mean? It's just like we're allowing these politicians to run game all over us, and then there's no retribution. These guys get to retire with these pensions, and make off with the money, set shitty policy that messes up everyone's lives, changes people's livelihoods, completely alters the life of humans, and pretty much, just like prison systems. You set up a community that will just fill up the prisons, and so you've pretty much created a system where you're like living off of humans, and that's called human trafficking, and there's a lot more human trafficking. All right, you guys enjoy. This is a good episode. Kind of went a little bit everywhere. Then I got into the Will Smith thing and the aristocratic thing and the sexual depravity of aristocratic people, higher class people. But that depravity is also so that's been the case since time in memorial, that the aristocrats were always deprived, natured people. But now that's all trickling down into the suburbs. So the higher end middle class people, well, I guess it's everywhere, but even the higher end middle class people, they're also abusing their own families and creating trauma cycles. And the people don't even realize they're being abused until about 20 years later, So, yeah, imagine. So if you're in high school, hey, how's it going, Kim? So, if you're in high school, even if you're watching this, if you haven't, just be aware, because you don't know if the person next to you, the next student, is like getting assaulted at home. You know what I mean? This stuff's happening. And an assault yeah, so just be aware of that. That's what most people need to realize. It's just like, especially in school, younger generations, the kids need to realize these at points that, it's, they don't know what the next kid's going through. And, yeah, you never know what's going to happen. But Kim, yeah, me too. All right, see you, Kim. All right, you guys have a good one. But those were the aspects, and I'll come back later. We'll talk again.